You better check the numbers.
All right, welcome back to the second episode of the Check Numbers Sports Podcast with my co-hosts Matt and Zach. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing insanely marvelous. How are
doing
you
great.
doing?
Love to hear it. We had a good first episode, good first week with the content, and we got a good list of topics today to talk about in the second episode. So we'll start with college football. The championship was last Monday. Georgia beat Alabama 33-18 in a pretty back and forth game. So what do you guys think of that game overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama would have won that fully healthy, like easily. But hey, I mean, congrats to Georgia. I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty boring first half. I mean, the score being like around like 6-9, nice in the first half. But then, I mean, it got really good in the third quarter. I mean, it went pretty back and forth, but then Georgia just like completely ran away with it in the fourth. And I mean, Adonai Mitchell just had a great touchdown catch in the third quarter. I mean, that guy's dirty. I mean, and Georgia's pass defense looked pretty good too. I mean, I know Bryce Young went. He threw for like around like 360 yards, but I mean, they had some two really good interceptions, especially that dagger pick six in the fourth quarter. But yeah, overall it was a pretty good game to watch.
Yeah, I'm in kind of disagree. I don't know if it's a done deal that Alabama would have won fully healthy. I mean, the way Georgia's defense has been playing like all season, especially coming off the win with Michigan. I mean, there are two surefire first round picks on that defense at least. And I think that I don't know. I mean, Georgia, they were the best team all season. And yes, Alabama won, but I don't know if you can all put it on Alabama's injuries. But I definitely I'm happy for Kirby Smart. You finally got the championship, finally took down Saban. So I thought it was a very entertaining game, and America won.
America did win. Yeah, that's true.
I actually have to agree with Capio on this one. I think that Alabama had all the momentum when they were up 18-13, and then the offsides and the free play touchdown, like you said. I think if that doesn't happen, I think this game is very different. And then again with the injuries, like if Jamison Williams doesn't go out with a torn ACL in the first half, and
exactly
Josh Jobe plays in that game, it's totally different. I think Alabama would have won, but I mean Georgia was a really good team, and they deserved to win that game. They played better in that game.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was a national championship, and there was two semifinal games that took place before it. And there was a lot of debate about whether those were the right four teams to be put in the playoff, and how the playoff format could possibly be changed in the coming years, because there's a lot of complaints about the format and about the games, saying they're not competitive, or that other teams should have gotten a shot. So what do you guys think about the format and if it should be changed?
I've always been a big proponent of expanding the playoffs, but not to like 10 or 12 or even 8. My ideal playoffs would be 6 teams with 2 teams getting a bye, because let's be real. Ohio State, yes, they lost to Michigan, probably would have put up a better fight against both Alabama or Georgia than Michigan and Cincinnati did. Like, let's be real. They were probably the third best team in the country all year, but they did lose one game. So I think expanding it to 6 allows for teams like this year we saw Oklahoma State, Baylor, what's the other team? Oklahoma State, Baylor, Notre Dame played at the very end just to fall short. So I think the six teams opens it up for more teams to be competitive throughout the entire season, and allows for I know there's a lot of debate whether opting out of bowl games, it allows for more competitive football, let's just say. And if they wanted to get rid of opting out of bowl games entirely, announce the playoffs after the bowl games.
Yeah, I think they should actually change the playoffs to around 12 teams. I mean, I think it'll really help with, like you said, it'll really help with more competitiveness with other teams other than like all of the Power 5 teams. I think in the long term, it'll help with recruiting. The teams not in the Power Five will be able to get, like you Cincinnati will be able to get better recruiting because Alabama, with Alabama, there's always they literally have a chance to win the championship every single year. So that's why all the recruits go there. But expanding it to 12 teams, I mean, it just allows for more competition. And yeah, but like you said before, I think also opting out of the bowl games, like it just shows like nobody really cares about bowl games. I mean, I honestly could not care less about like the Mayo Bowl. Like it's really just a cash grab in my opinion. Like there's just so many to keep track of. They don't mean anything. All of the top recruits, the top draft prospects, they're opting out of these games, and I don't blame them. You don't want to hurt your draft stock. So I think expanding the playoffs will help with that. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing quickly before you go, Dan? One thing about the 12 team, I only disagree because if let's just say Alabama's the best team, what's going to change about that when you add teams? Like they're still going to be the best team. They're still going to be the favorites. And I feel like it's going to be like the NFL where like the first few rounds are going to be boring football because the best teams are just going to be blowing by these lower teams. Even if they're in the playoffs, they're not going to have a shot.
No, yeah, I totally agree with, I mean, I don't disagree. Like I could see that, but I personally think that it would mostly still just allow for more teams to like get exposure, and it would be better for like recruiting. But I could totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah, so for me, I went in the middle of you guys. I said a 10-team format would work. You have the 1 and 2 seeds to get a bye, and you'd go from there, 3 against 10, and so on and so forth. Like kind of how the NFL used to do it with the 1 and 2 get a bye. And I think it's for many reasons. Like I think I watched like 1.5 bowl games this year. Like I watched half of Alabama against Cincinnati and like 3/4 of the national championship. Like, and it wasn't even really exciting. The most exciting bowl game was Ohio State, Utah. And I didn't even know that game was going on until I got alerts on ESPN about how it was a shootout. Like it was like 42-40 in like the third quarter. And I think that just shows that expanding it would lead those games to be more significant because even though it was a shootout, Ohio State's arguably their best receiver sat out that game to get ready for the draft. So if he's in that game, it's completely different, and it's even more of a shootout.
The two best
they're
receivers.
2 best sat out, which just shows that if they're sitting out the Rose Bowl, if that's a playoff game, they're not sitting out that game, right? So that's the first reason that those guys would play in those games. Second reason, like you said, with recruiting, guys would go to schools like Cincinnati or Oklahoma State or Notre Dame if they knew that they had a better chance of making the playoff. Like a lot of guys go to Alabama and Georgia because they know that those schools are in the playoff every year, and going to those schools or Ohio State will increase their chances of making the college football playoffs. That's the second reason. The third is I just think it will make the regular season mean a lot more. Like a lot of times you have teams in the beginning of the year that are scared to play against bigger opponents because they know if they lose, their season's arguably done before it even really gets started. I think next year there's a really big matchup early in the year. It's Georgia against, I believe it's Oregon or Texas, someone like a big Power 5 school. Arguably, if Oregon loses that game, their season's over. Like they're not gonna be able to make the college football playoff. But Georgia, if they lose, they have a shot to make it back if they go through Alabama and win the SEC championship. So I think it'll make the regular season mean a lot more if teams know that maybe you could lose 2 games and you can make the playoff, or you can be a 1-loss team and you lose your conference championship and you miss the playoff. Because I think this year, Oklahoma State lost the Big 12 championship by a yard. Like they were that close, and they arguably might have made it over Georgia in the college football playoff because Cincinnati was undefeated and Georgia had just lost in their conference championship, and Oklahoma State would have won their conference championship. And a lot of times the conference championship is what I know it probably wouldn't have happened, but I think the conference champion usually makes it over the non-conference champion.
I get where you're coming from.
So I think
Yeah.
if it had expanded to 10 teams and both of them would have got in, and Utah and Ohio State and Baylor would have all gotten in, and Notre Dame, it just would have made many more entertaining games. Because I think if you make those games mean more, less players will rest, the NCAA will make more money, and teams will just have more to play for at the end of the year.
No, yeah, I definitely agree, especially with the point about, having like maybe one or two losses in the regular season. Like from a lot of teams, if you lose just one game, you're done. So I definitely want to see the college football playoff expand to maybe at least 10 teams. So then that way, that the games will be more meaningful.
Yeah. I just think that while yes, the games might not be as high quality, or at least some of them might not be, you're going to get some that are, and you're just going to have more schools that are playing for more at the end of the year.
Exactly.
I agree with you both in that sense, but my only thing is that the end result's probably going to be the same. So like the top two teams are probably going to make it to the end. So I get it with the fact of making the schools like feel more, but I feel like it's kind of pointless at that point to expand it to that many teams.
I see what you're saying there, but if the results still going to be the same, then that's going to be your Final Four. You're still going to get to your Final Four, but it would just make the other bowl games just mean so much more if those were playoff games than if they weren't playoff games. And then you could get a Big 12 team against an SEC team, or a non-Power 5 team against a Pac-12 team. It just opens up a lot of new matchups and just more important games down the stretch.
Exactly. I think it would only stay like that for maybe the short term, actually, because
once schools realize they have more of a shot, then players are going to want to play in the playoffs, so they're going to be spread around more.
I think that's what would happen.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities that college football can go with, but I just think that 4 teams is definitely not.
They should definitely. We can all agree that they should definitely expand.
It should definitely be more than 4 teams. A lot of times that 5th team is more competitive than the 3rd or 4th team.
Ohio State was the 3rd best.
Would have been more competitive than Cincinnati.
They were the 3rd best team in the country.
It's sort of a popularity contest with the college football playoff.
And a lot of time it has to do with your ranking at the beginning of the year. I mean, I think Wake Forest had 2 losses and Pitt had 2 losses, but those were teams that were so unexpected that they never even were in the conversation for a college football playoff.
No, yeah, definitely.
But they would have been if they had been ranked higher in the game, like Cincinnati was. A lot of the reason Cincinnati was ranked so high was because they were ranked like in the top 10 at the beginning of the year. So they had already established themselves, and that helped them get in over a team like Oklahoma State or Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So now I think we can move on to the first round playoff recap for the NFL. We saw a lot of prospects in that national championship game that could be in the top 10 of the draft and the first round, but these are the teams that probably will not be picking the top 10, or they won't be picking the top 10. In the first round of the playoffs, we had 5 games so far, 1 more game tonight going on right now. So what do you guys think about the first round playoff games?
Honestly, there really weren't many surprises here. I mean, basically for me, the only surprise was, I guess, the 49ers winning against the Cowboys. I mean, props to them. I was wrong. I honestly thought the Cowboys would win in a landslide, but although I'm still not really convinced they're going to make it out of divisional round. I mean, especially with Jimmy G just looking so bad. I mean, 197 yards and a 68.6 QBR. Like, once you face those better teams and when you get deeper in the playoffs, that performance is just not going to cut it. I mean, Jimmy G, like, he really should just focus less on if he's looking hot while he's playing football and more just on learning how to throw the football, to be honest.
Jimmy G played well the first half, but in typical Jimmy G fashion, he couldn't complete the job and allowed the other team to come back in the game. But besides that, because I did pick the Niners, I think the Niners, they, like I said in the last podcast, the Niners strengths match up with the Cowboys weaknesses. That was seen. Trevon Diggs got burnt toast. Terrible in coverage.
Should not be all pro.
Terrible. That's, I mean, whatever. Terrible in coverage, but the Niners deserve to win that game. Do not blame the refs. Dak should have known better to either slide earlier.
Yeah, if you think that was the refs' fault,
right
then
away.
you don't know like the rules of
exactly.
football.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then the other games, I think the Cincinnati game was as advertised. Two teams pretty close in talent or whatever, or as you could say, playing till the end. It came down to the last possession. Whether that blatant whistle controversy, I think the better team ended up winning. I was surprised though with Buffalo because I didn't expect them to win by 30. I that blew me away. I thought they would win. I didn't think they would win by that much. Josh Allen is otherworldly. He's insane.
He's the Patriots' father.
Exactly. And going quickly about the other two games yesterday, Eagles and Steelers, we all agreed, two worst teams in the playoffs. They showed that, like you said last week, Matt. Jalen Hurts, not a great passer.
The garbage time king just does nothing until the fourth quarter when it doesn't matter.
The Steelers went out like everyone thought they would. Big Ben got his last playoff start. It is what it is. The Chiefs were going to win that game no matter what. So I don't think there were many surprises either. But yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of games. Like, I mean, I didn't really watch the Bengals Raiders game, but I mean, the only good game this week really was the 49ers Cowboys game, and that looked like a blowout for like 3 quarters. So like a lot of these games were kind of a landslide, and like the Eagles had no shot, the Steelers had no shot, and the Patriots. I mean, last week when we did our playoff rankings, I had the Patriots, Eagles, and Steelers in a bottom tier. Like we all knew that those teams really didn't have a great shot to win playoff games.
Yeah.
I think that showed this week.
Yeah, sorry.
You go.
All right. I mean, yeah, we really saw in the first round just like basically the Mickey Mouse teams we're gonna get bounced.
The frauds
in the first
were
round.
Shown.
Yeah, so I think the next round will definitely be more interesting to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think that the best game of the consensus two best games of the week were the Niners Cowboys and the Bengals Raiders. I think the Bengals Raiders game was very, very, very exciting because I mean I was watching it. I was sitting on the edge of my chair. Whether Derek Carr has had all these fourth quarter comebacks throughout the whole season. He's been clutch. Whether clutch is a real thing or not,
it's not. But that's something for another.
It is.
He's something for another day.
He's done this so many times. So I was rooting for the Bengals. So I was happy to see that they'd ended that drought. I'm happy for their fans, happy for that city. They deserve it. And I'm glad that they're moving on.
Yeah, no, they deserve to win that game. They were the better team. I mean, I think that the Raiders were good. It was a good story, but the Bengals are just way more talented. And they arguably they played better. They capitalized on opportunities that they had in that game. And in the other games, I mean, the Chiefs were obviously a better team, although I don't think they really proved much in that game because the Steelers are not good. And the Chiefs offense didn't really look good for like the first half. They kind of just turned it on at the end. I mean, the Bucs took care of business, but they're still not super healthy. And I mean, the Eagles were just not good. And then the last thing I have to say about the first round playoff matchups is Bills Patriots. Bills fans wanted Josh Allen, and they got him. They got Josh Allen in that game.
I think you mean
5
Patriots
touchdowns.
fans.
Patriots fans wanted Josh Allen, and they got him in that game. 308 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had less incompletions than touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns, 4 incompletions.
The first perfect game in NFL history.
The first perfect game in NFL history was by this guy right here. I'll show it up close.
The number one Josh Allen fan.
He is a number. I think he's better than Patrick Mahomes. I don't think it's really a conversation at this point. He got snubbed for the Pro Bowl by Lamar Jackson, and I think he's the best quarterback in the AFC. And I don't think it's that close.
One thing I will say, that next week's Chiefs-Bills matchup is like a pseudo AFC championship. The winner of that game is going to the Super Bowl.
He's going to win the conference.
The winner of that game is beating either the Titans or the Bengals. I think it's just the quarterback play. Like Mahomes and Allen are probably 2 of the top 4 quarterbacks in the league. So I think we're seeing how, like, a lot of times in the regular season and through the draft process and team building, the impact of a quarterback is kind of pushed to the side. A lot of teams will take, supporting cast guys over quarterbacks. Like they'll take a star at a position over like an above average quarterback, and it'll backfire.
And I think we see with these teams, like the 49ers are really good, but their one downside is they don't have a star quarterback. Whereas a team like the Titans, or not the Titans, like the Packers, their roster's good, but they're just elevated so much by Aaron Rodgers. And that's a bad like thing to say because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But like teams are just elevated so much by good quarterback play in the playoffs.
I think that works both ways because one, you could have an insane roster and a mediocre quarterback and succeed, but you can also be like Jacksonville last year, who has no supporting cast, drafts. And yes, Trevor Lawrence was the consensus pick. Anyone drafting first would have drafted him. But you saw Trevor Lawrence didn't have the best rookie season because of how lackluster supporting cast was. So I do think the supporting cast matters, but I definitely don't think that the quarterback should be just pushed aside because you need a good offensive line to have a quarterback succeed. Like, let's be real. Josh Allen, Mahomes, Rodgers wouldn't be what they are if they had an O-line like the Jags or the Giants. Like it's pretty simple. Like I think the supporting cast matters a lot, but you can't have a nobody quarterback because then they're not going to elevate the play of the supporting cast.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the teams that are left and the ones that have questions, a lot of it revolves around the quarterback. Like, I think I have less questions about the Bengals than I do about the Titans because I think Joe Burrow is just that much better than Ryan Tannehill at this point in the season.
Exactly.
He's just more talented. And like the Bills and Chiefs, we don't have many problems about because they're led by top 5 quarterbacks. Like,
yeah, Ryan Tannehill hasn't had like a good passing performance in like a month now, other than against like a good team.
All of the Titans. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's really just going to come down to the quarterback play, which brings me into another topic, which quarterback should basically win MVP almost every year, but that's something for another week. Also.
One of our dear friends had an idea that he proposed to me and Zach last night that there should be a quarterback MVP and then a non-quarterback MVP. Interesting thing.
Definitely interesting. I mean,
I feel like that's already there with MVP and Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think
so Offensive Player of the Year is rarely a quarterback.
Yeah, because like let's be real, the most valuable position in the NFL is a quarterback. I mean, a running back and wide receiver are in large part their success is in large part to like their surroundings. So yeah, but I respect the idea, but we do really mostly already have that with Offensive Player of the Year, which could go to literally any player on offense. I don't care who, but the MVP I think should just go to a quarterback basically every time actually.
Yeah. Going back one thing to that with the Titans, I feel like, yeah, Tannehill might not be great, but I definitely think that, like, I don't know. I feel like
he's above average.
We just said that the winner of the Bills Chiefs game is going to go to the Super Bowl, which I still stand by, but the Titans, they beat the Rams, they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bills, they beat the Niners, they beat a lot of playoff teams last year. And I don't think you can just overlook them because of their quarterback, because of how good their defense has been playing and how good their running game has been and will be with Henry returning.
I feel like what you just said, though, kind of shows that Tannehill has not been the one to elevate their play. It's been their defense and their running game. So I think that's just my question. That's why I have more questions about them than some of the other teams in the playoffs.
No, you're completely right. I was just saying because of how well the other parts of the team have been playing, you can't overlook them completely.
Yeah. So I think there was some good games and some bad games in the playoffs. But we've got some really good matchups in the second round of the playoffs. So we'll start with the Titans. They've got the Bengals at home, coming off a rest. I've got the Titans in this one, but I think it's going to be close. And I think if the Titans don't get out to an early lead, they could be in trouble because the Bengals are high flying. They're really talented on offense. They come at you a lot of different ways. And if the Titans can't keep up, then they're going to lose that game. So what do you guys think about that?
No, yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely going to be close, but I'm going to go with the Bengals. I'm riding with Joe Burrow.
Ooh.
Because like I said before, Ryan, the quarterback play is probably going to be very important in this game. And I'm just not convinced with Ryan Tannehill that they're gonna be able to beat the star-studded offense of the Bengals. I mean, there's just all of these weapons. I mean, on offense, I think that talent will just eventually overpower the Titans defense, despite how good they've been. Don't get me wrong. So, but I'm going with the Bengals on this one.
Yeah, I was really close to picking the Bengals, but I had to go with the Titans. I think just coming off a week of rest and their coaching, I just don't see them coming out flat.
No, yeah, that's fair, but I don't know. I just haven't really been high on the Titans just going into the playoffs. So I think the Bengals are gonna take this one.
Yeah.
I'm taking the Titans too. I think that the Bengals have kind of reached their ceiling this year. I think the Titans, especially with Henry, will jump out to a lead, and I think they'll be able to ride Henry to that lead. With that lead, I don't know. I have more confidence in the Titans run game and the Titans defense than I do with the Bengals defense and the Bengals run game. So that's why I think it's going to be close, but I'm in the end, give the edge to the Titans.
Yeah, I could see the Titans winning, but I still think, like I said before, the quarterback play is just it's gonna go get done that, and I don't think Ryan Tannehill really has it in him to elevate his offense like that.
Yeah. And then the next matchup we have is the Bills Chiefs, like we talked about. It's going to be a very good matchup, and I've got the Bills in this one. I think the Bills just lit up a really good defense, and I think the Chiefs defense is not even going to be close.
No, yeah. I mean, this is definitely going to be the game to watch. I mean, I think whoever wins this one will probably win the AFC. I have the Chiefs, but barely. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Bills offense and their defense really has been really good this entire season. I mean, I don't think either game in the first round of the playoffs really showed us anything to be worried about or something like that. But I think just Mahomes, he's been here before. I mean, I just going based off the playoff experience and I mean, I guess how good he's just been. I mean, even last week, I'm going with the Chiefs, but barely.
I'm gonna go with the Bills. I'm gonna stick with my Super Bowl pick. I think the Bills are riding high. I think Josh Allen's on this tear. I think shows no sign of stopping. I think the Bills, like Dan said, the Bills offense against the Chiefs defense. I don't know how.
I mean, they already played this year, and
the
Bills put up 38 points, and
yeah, I think the Chiefs. I think it'll be an offensive shootout, but I think in the end, the Bills will get over the mountain and defeat the Chiefs.
I will say though, if the Bills win this game, then I think you could definitely see Josh Allen as the number one quarterback in the league. That's all.
I don't know if I put him at number one, but he's definitely top 3 for me.
No, yeah, I could if he wins, then I could definitely see the argument as number one.
Yeah. And then so that's for the AFC. That would set up a good AFC championship, but I think the even better matchups are in the NFC. You've got the Packers and the 49ers and the Bucks and the Rams. So we'll start with the Packers. They were the 1 seed in the NFC. They've got the 49ers who are riding high off their win. And I've got the Packers. I think that they have experience at quarterback and they have a more talented roster, and they're gonna go to the Super Bowl, and their path continues with winning this game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to add to that. I mean, I think basically everybody has the Packers winning this game.
I also think that the Packers are going to win. I think the Niners kind of reached their ceiling, kind of with the same thing with the Bengals. I mean, I don't think you can bet against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I mean, he's on a mission. He's been insane this year. There's nothing that's going to stop him from winning the Super Bowl. I think he's not gonna. I don't think the Niners really have a shot.
Yeah, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
close.
And the next matchup we have is Bucks Rams, or Bucks, and then the winner of the Rams and the Cardinals. I have the Rams winning tonight, and if they do, I have them beating the Bucks next week.
I agree.
I think that the Rams are just healthier. They're
Really?
more high powered. They're playing very well, and if they beat the Cardinals tonight, that shows they can beat a good team. And I think they're going to beat the Bucks next week too. But if the Cardinals win, I got the Bucks moving on.
Okay, I see that, but I mean, winning against the Cardinals, if they win tonight. I mean, I don't really think that shows that much. I mean, the Cardinals just had an ice cold second half. I have the Rams winning the game right now, and if they advance, I still think the Bucks will. Tom Brady will just, he's been there so many times. He still can elevate everybody's play. I think he either whichever team he plays, the Bucks will still win.
I think if the Cardinals win, then the Bucks will win that matchup. But I think the Rams do it. I don't know why. I just have this gut feeling. I mean, the Rams have the star power on offense. They have.
And the
they're
Bucks
not as
don't though.
with all
Not
their
healthy.
injuries.
I mean, okay, fair.
I think
Keyshawn Vaughn was the leading rusher in this past.
I think the Bucks strength is their run game, and the Rams don't really have to rely on their run game like the Eagles have to do. And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying
Jalen Ramsey
yes,
is going to shut down Mike Evans, and they're going to
I
struggle
think
to throw the ball.
the Bucks, yes, they have Brady, but he can't do everything. And I think with the Rams front seven, especially with Miller and Donald coming after Brady with an O-line that just got banged up the past week, I think it's not a good recipe for success.
Yeah, I think Tristan Wirfs is banged up, which is going to be big.
Tristan Wirfs
Yeah.
and Ryan Jensen.
Yeah,
So
it might be.
they're-
It might be.
They're
tough.
struggling. They're struggling a little bit, but yeah. So that wraps up our second round predictions for the NFL. And last week on Monday, a lot of coach firings took place, and a lot of teams have vacancies at their head coaching spot. But we'll start with some of the firings. Who are some guys that you think should have or shouldn't have gotten fired this past Monday or this week?
Zach, I could let you go first on this one.
All right. So for me, there's one major surprise, which is Brian Flores. I don't understand why they did it. I don't understand the logic behind it. I'm not going to question it because he's probably better off without them finding a new team. I think there were two that I wasn't surprised, but I also wasn't shocked that they weren't. And I think those are David Culley and Vic Fangio. Like I don't think I would have been surprised either way. And then the non-surprises to me were Mike Zimmer. He's a good coach. His time was just up. Matt Nagy, we knew his time was coming. And of course, New York rejoice. Joe Judge is gone. He's a terrible coach, a liar, a phony, a fraud, tough guy, thinks he's hot stuff, not. Terrible coach. Thank God that Mara and Tish did the right thing. I can go on and on about this. If they were to keep him, I don't know. I might have just honestly just cried myself to sleep because of how terrible he is. Making NFL players run laps like high schoolers. I mean, you're a phony. You're a fraud. You're a fake tough guy.
That is
You're not going to
ridiculous.
succeed. Go eat your pizza. Yeah, go eat your fat pizza, you fat ass. Ordering beer and pizza to his house afterwards. He deserves it all.
For this
Adios.
one, I in the notes that I had, I wrote down Zach's going to take care of this one for us.
I had that plan. I wanted Zach to just go off on Joe Judge.
We're on.
So the next one,
we're succeeding now. Now that he is gone and Gettleman is gone, there's a future.
Yeah.
The window's been cleared. You can see.
Giants, they still don't have a future, but we'll see what they do.
But they stink less now.
Yeah, Joe Judge definitely deserves to be fired. We talked about that we were surprised that he didn't get fired on the first day, and then when he finally did, you were really happy in the chat that he was not there anymore. But one of my surprises that I think shouldn't have gotten fired, but like we've said, not surprised that he got fired, and that was David Culley in Houston. Yeah, they were 4-13, but this is a team that we thought was going to be lucky to win 2 games. And not only did they win 4, but they looked competitive in a lot more than 4 games, including like the last week against Tennessee. Tennessee was trying to win that game. They were fighting for the first round bye, and although they went down 21-0 early, they fought back and made it a game at the end. And I think it just showed that this team was obviously in it to the end of the year, and I think that should show well for David Culley, but he obviously got fired at the end. And then for should have gotten fired, I have one guy that I think should have gotten fired that has not yet. Or there are 2 guys. One is Matt Rule. Panthers looked like a mess at the end of this year. The second guy is Mike McCarthy for the Cowboys. I think he should be fired.
I think he's done. He should be.
Not only because of the game yesterday, but I think he's being carried by his coordinators. Because he has 2 coordinators that I think should be head coaches. And I think Kellen Moore should be the Cowboys head coach next year and not Mike McCarthy.
No, yeah, I agree with that too. With regarding the Brian Flores firing, I mean, at like first glance, it definitely does look like a surprise. I mean, but then when you look at it a little closer, I could see it. I mean, I don't know if I would have fired Brian Flores, but I could definitely see it, you know, with the whole power struggle going on between the GM and Brian Flores. And then, I mean, the Dolphins were just very disappointing after, you know, a very encouraging season in 2020. So that one, I could have seen it both ways, but then,
No.
Oh, sorry. You could
finish. All right. So wait. Yeah, you talk.
All right. The one that I did, I mean, basically all of the firings, although I could have seen happening, I wasn't really surprised, but the one that actually did surprise me was Vic Fangio. I mean, that one to me just didn't really make any sense. Like the defense was very good this year. I mean, they shut down a lot of guys, but like what really was the problem was the offense. But to be fair, I mean, the Broncos really didn't have much to work with on offense. I mean, they were starting, you know, it was like a platoon between Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, when you have both of those guys at quarterback, you know, there's only so much you could do. I mean, so I think they really should have just, you know, revamped the offensive coordinators and not actually fired Vic Fangio, because he got a really good defense together. So
yeah, I kind of think Fangio and Culley both got the short end of the stick in their respective teams, because Culley he was never given a chance to succeed. Like,
yeah,
the Texans, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, he was a place filler coach. He wasn't their long-term answer. He was a guy to bridge the gap until they got the Watson situation figured out. And Fangio they never got the quarterback right. Their roster, if they get in the offseason a Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, automatic Super Bowl contenders. Their roster is ready to win now, and they just didn't give him a good quarterback. I mean, I don't know what else there is. I mean, Teddy's not a bad quarterback, but he's not a good quarterback. He's not going to get you into the playoffs. He's not going to win you Super Bowl. He'll get you where they are. They'll finish 7-10, which is probably what you'd expect with a Teddy Bridgewater led team.
Yeah, there's only so much you could do when all you're throwing is 5-yard screens. So
yeah, talking about 5-yard screens with the Dolphins, I think Brian Flores, like, I kind of agree that I wasn't super surprised that he got fired. Like, I don't think he should have, but I think he's a really good coach, but he wasn't in the right situation. I think he needs to coach a team needs to be more defensive oriented than offensive oriented, because he's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. I think that's part of the reason why Tua struggled. And that brings me into our next segment about early candidates for head coaching jobs this next year. There's a bunch of vacancies. And I think Brian Flores, I think he's the perfect guy for the Texans. This is a team that needs a leader. They need a leader. If there's anyone who could change the culture there, I think he can do it. And I think he could help with the Deshaun Watson situation.
He's
a
their
little bit.
only shot at keeping Deshaun Watson.
Yep. Deshaun Watson has
Yeah.
openly said that he wants to play for Brian Flores. And I think if you bring him to Houston and he gets all the legal stuff figured out, which is a big if he does, I think he'll stay in Houston and play for Brian Flores.
Yeah. I think that is a very good fit. I think for me, the best job opening would be probably the Vikings. I mean, when you look both on offense and defense, they have the star power. I mean, on the offensive side, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, if you count him. And then on the defensive side, you have Harrison Smith, Anthony Barr. I mean, with Daniel Hunter coming back, that defense will definitely improve. So I think whatever coach goes there, I think that's definitely the best position to be in. So
I think.
Yeah, I also had. You can go, Zach.
No, if you can finish.
Yeah, I would agree that the Vikings are the best destination. I put them barely over the Broncos because I think the Broncos just have too much uncertainty. And if you don't get a quarterback there, then they're going to repeat a 7-10 season.
Yeah, exactly. You don't
with
really
the Vikings,
know with the quarterback situation.
With the Vikings, I think they just underperformed. Like they had a really good team, and they reminded me a lot of Dallas last year with a healthy Dak Prescott, a team that was very good on offense, but their defense held them back. And that's why I think they should get Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, because I think he's going to do exactly what he did in Dallas this year and turn around a bottom 5 defense and turn them into a top 5 defense. And I think he'd be a really good coach. He already has head coaching experience in Atlanta. And when he was in Atlanta, their offense was good. Like they had a good offense. So I think he showed that he can work on both sides of the ball. And I think the Vikings should go and get him as a head coach.
That is a very good fit.
I definitely think that the Broncos and Vikings are two of the best situations, but I think one that's being overlooked is Jacksonville. I can list a lot of reasons because one, you have the quarterback in place, at least for the foreseeable future. You're not going to give up on Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick, for at least another 3 seasons. So you have time. 2, you have the first overall pick this year. You have a chance to get a cornerstone guy for a franchise. 3, you're not going in with any expectations. They were the worst team in the league this year. So you're going in only getting better. Like you're only going to improve. And 4, Jacksonville, very, very low key area, not harsh media. You have a chance to kind of not go behind the scenes, but lay low for a little bit and not be attacked at every move like a Joe Judge was with the New York media.
You can't be much worse than Urban Meyer was this year.
Exactly. I
can only go up from there.
With the expectations, with not the expectations, with the legacy that Urban Meyer left, the prime candidate for me for the Jags would be Byron Leftwich, which is right now Tampa Bay's offensive coordinator. He's a young guy, an ex-quarterback for the Jaguars, and I think he's a young offensive mind who will only help Trevor Lawrence succeed and get that franchise turning in the right direction.
Yeah, so for the Jaguars, I had the same kind of thinking where I went with an offensive coordinator for a top 5 quarterback that's been in the league for a long time. And I went with Nathaniel Hackett, who's the Packers offensive coordinator. I think he could just develop Trevor Lawrence. Like he's worked with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers, I think, is the most talented quarterback, at least arm talent wise, is the most talented quarterback in the NFL and has been a top 5 quarterback for the last decade plus. And I think if you pair him with Trevor Lawrence and get some weapons around them, I think they could do something there in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it can't really get worse than Urban Meyer. Just the entire time he was there, it was just a dumpster fire. So
yeah,
I could definitely see the Jacksonville as being like not necessarily like a better situation than expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And then when we talk about Brian Flores, and that's with the Dolphins, and obviously they need a coach. So I think they also go after an offensive guy, an Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs.
I agree.
If there's anyone who could develop Tua, it's a guy that's been working with Patrick Mahomes for the past 3 or 4 years. So I think that he would be great for them. And if they don't think Tua is the answer, he could definitely attract a quarterback to come play for him in Miami. And it's Miami. People want to play.
That's facts.
Yeah.
That's very true. I think one other thing is we were talking about the Vikings, and I don't know. I think you're right. Their head coach opening is upper tier, but I part of me feels like it might be a more difficult task than people are saying, because I feel like their defense is getting old. I mean, Eric Kendricks, Daniil Hunter,
Harrison Smith is
Anthony
old.
Barr, Harrison Smith, they're getting old. So, and you don't have many picks to work with. You're kind of cap locked with Kirk Cousins. So
Yeah, one
I
of the
feel
reasons I
like
put the Vikings at the top was because I kind of assumed Kirk might leave.
the thing is, I don't think Kirk
Mhm.
leaves. Kirk might leave after next year, but at least for one season, they have Kirk Cousins, and that kind of limits your ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
That
true.
was my only other comment I had to make.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just think, with it, especially on the offensive side, I mean, it has a lot of potential with the supporting cast they have. And I think, yeah, with Kirk Cousins could leave. And if he does, they can possibly go get a quarterback. And I think they could be with a good quarterback, they could be, that offense could be very scary.
Yeah. And then another guy who's coveted for a head coaching job. I'm a big Josh Allen guy, and the guy who developed Josh Allen and Brian Dable is a guy that's being pursued heavily and has already interviewed for some jobs. And there's two teams that I think he'd be really, really good for. I think he'd be good for a lot of teams, but I think there's two teams he'd be really good for because he's worked with a quarterback that needs development with their arm and has rushing upside. So that's the Bears and the Giants. And much to Zach's dismay, I have him going to the Bears because
Okay.
I think Justin Fields is a much better option than Daniel Jones right now and has much more potential. And I think it's a better situation than the Giants. And it's Chicago. It's a good city and a team that has had success in the past. So I think Brian Dable goes to Chicago.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I'm honestly surprised that, I mean, Daniel Jones even still has a starting job. So I think I think definitely Justin Fields is the better quarterback to work with. So I think, so low key, I mean, Chicago is not a bad place to be as a head coach.
I wouldn't be mad at him for that. You have to think logically as a coach of where you want to play. But I would love him as the Giants coach, but I think people are overlooking the Giants head coaching job just a little bit. Yes, not a great situation, but you're coming in with a clean slate. Gettleman's gone. You're going to be hired by a GM who wants you. You have 2 top 10 picks, and you have the ability to move off of a Daniel Jones because he wasn't the GM's pick. The new GM coming in didn't draft Daniel Jones, so the new head coach will have pretty much a free reign of what he wants to do with an offense, plus 2 top 10 picks. I might be a little biased, but I do think that people are hating on the job position a little more than they should. And it's New York. I mean, the media capital of the world. I mean, if you're known as the guy who turned around the New York Giants, a historic franchise, then you'll be a savior.
I agree with that, but I actually had the Giants as my worst head coaching opening because they looked pathetic to end the year. I mean, it was really bad.
Because of who?
Like,
the guy who's
because
out
of
the
their
door.
team. Because I think it was just their whole organization, their
You're starting
team,
Jake Fromm. You're not going to
their
expect
team,
much.
their organization. Yes, they had the 2 top 10 picks, but when you compare them to some of the other teams, it was between them, Houston, and Jacksonville. And Jacksonville has Trevor Lawrence, so that made them a little higher. And then it was between Houston and the Giants. And I know they have the top 10 picks, but Houston overperformed this year with arguably a bad head coach. And I think if they bring in Brian Flores and get Deshaun Watson back, they're going to be a fringe playoff team like they were 2 years ago or the last couple of years. So I had the Giants as the worst head coaching opening. I just don't think.
I don't blame
Like
you
you
for
said,
that.
it's New York and it's the media capital of the world. And you can do, if you turn it around, it's really good. But you saw with Joe Judge, if you do bad, it could be really bad.
You're right. You're completely right.
I think it's pretty obvious that the Giants is obviously the worst situation to go into, and just looking at the roster, like there's really not much to work with. You have Saquon, who's just looked not very good, just not good at all. Very washed. with Kenny Galladay, I didn't get the signing to begin with, but even then he just is not an X receiver, like not even close. The defensive side just didn't look that good either. I mean, just everything about the Giants.
It's crazy how good Matthew Stafford makes some receivers look.
Yeah.
There are two players on the Giants offense I would be upset with if they got rid of, being Andrew Thomas and Kadarius Toney. The rest, I'm indifferent if they're moved on. I mean,
yeah.
That's the
free Kadarius Toney.
I'd be mad if they got rid of Evan Engram. He's been pretty good for them in his tenure there.
The defense has some players, but they're bottom 5 team in the league. We don't have to go into detail about them, but
yeah, it's not a good situation. But the last team I want to mention is the Raiders, because they have an interim head coach right now, and they just made the playoffs with an interim head coach after the whole John Gruden fiasco, and I think they should stick with their interim head coach. Derek Carr has voiced support for him, and he seems to have control over the locker room, and he led them to a playoff berth when everyone counted them out, and they went down to the wire in that playoff game. So I think he earned the right to at least get serious consideration for that job.
I definitely agree.
I agree too. I think if they wanted to stay conservative, you stick with Rick Bisaccia. But if you want to go big, I think they could hire Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh has expressed his interest to go back into the NFL. Las Vegas is a huge market. I think the attraction of Harbaugh and the Raiders, he's had success in the NFL before. I think if they wanted to make a splash, and they'd go after Harbaugh, and they just got rid of their general manager earlier today too. So that's also a team with a clean slate of hiring a GM and a coach.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, because their roster honestly isn't like that special besides Derek Carr, and I think his contract's almost up, so they're in a big spot this offseason. But I think that does it for our NFL stuff for this week. So move on to some MLB stuff. The Hall of Fame vote is on the 25th, and every year there's a debate about whether steroid users should be in the Hall of Fame. We've seen that steroids keep a lot of guys out, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, some other guys, for longer than people think they should. So do you think that steroids should keep players out of the Hall of Fame?
No, absolutely not. Let them all in. Let Bonds, let Clemens, let A-Rod, let them in. Because even if you look at their careers, when they had no steroids, Bonds he won 3 MVPs with the Pirates. If you're just looking at his time with the Pirates, I mean, he was like a 30-30 player. He was clearly on pace to be a Hall of Famer. Even with Clemens, I think you look at their careers when they didn't take steroids, they were clearly on track to be Hall of Famers. And even the steroid users, they made baseball get a lot of attention. I mean, the Hall of Fame is a place to showcase baseball's history. You can't really just I don't think you should just blacklist all users of all steroid users, because I mean they made baseball fun to watch. Like so many home runs hit. Chicks dig the long ball. So I mean, I think really realistically, you should look at the player's career and whether if they were on a Hall of Fame track, and if they were, such as A-Rod, Clemens, and Bonds, I think you should let them in.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
You go. There you go.
All right. So I think they definitely should be in the Hall of Fame, because steroids don't make you better at baseball. They make you stronger. And I think baseball is one of, if not the hardest sports to play. And hitting a baseball is definitely one of the hardest things to do in any sport. And I think many people can agree with that. So I think while it gives you a strength advantage, you're not hitting a home run unless you square it up at least a little bit. And it's really hard to do that. And I think that not only that, but I think steroids were in the game way more than people know. I think there was a lot of players who took it and did really badly, and it didn't matter how strong they were. And I think, like you said, the Hall of Fame is the history of the sport. and you can't exclude guys that have set records and have entertained fans for decades just because they wanted to get a little stronger, because I don't think that's the sole reason that they had their success.
Exactly. And also you also can't really pick and choose which people that had to do with steroids, such as Pudge Rodriguez or even Mike Piazza.
David Ortiz.
David Ortiz. You can't pick and choose which players that had to do with steroids be in the Hall of Fame, because when you look at Pudge, there were a lot of reports that he did steroids. I mean, Jose Canseco came out and said that he helped him take steroids. So I think it's ridiculous that even just Bonds alone hasn't been inducted yet, because I honestly think he's the greatest player of all time.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think it's ridiculous. They should just let him in.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should be let in, especially with what you were just saying, how you can't pick and choose. If you're going to let one in, you got to let all of them in. And also for me, the Hall of Fame is about, can you write the history of the sport without this player? And you cannot write the history of baseball without Barry Bonds.
And it's not just Barry Bonds, it's the whole
It's not just Barry
era.
Bonds, but Barry Bonds
Exactly.
is the most controversial one. So like, you can't write the history of the league about the guy who set the record for most home runs. I'm pretty sure. I don't even know.
He beat Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron and all those
7
guys.
MVPs. I'm pretty sure.
You can't keep him out.
He had over a 200 WRC plus for like 4 straight seasons. Like you cannot write the history of baseball without talking about Barry Bonds.
Literally one of the most feared hitters of all time, if not the most feared.
Probably
hitter of all
the
time.
most feared hitter.
argue.
He has more intentional walks than some players have regular just walks in general.
And he had so many walks with the bases loaded. I mean, they would rather take one run than him hit a home run. And before, like they were scared of him hitting.
Exactly.
And it wasn't because he was strong; it was because he knew how to hit, and he could square up a baseball and hit it 450 feet.
He was the greatest hitter of all time.
Yeah.
Maybe not all the time, but you could make a case
that time.
Of that time,
was.
it was definitely Barry Bonds.
Mm-hmm. So you can't keep one of the most historic players in baseball out of the historic museum of baseball. It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. It's bullshit.
Yeah. And then so the Hall of Fame vote is next week. We'll see who gets inducted. There was no inductees last year, so that was interesting. And I don't know how you can let that happen. The voting is an interesting system, but we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, it is kind of a little flawed, to say the least. But to be fair, I don't really remember like from last year the ballot being like all of that talented.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah. No, it definitely depends who's on the ballot, but
The one thing I will say about the Hall of Fame voting is that these voters that are posting their ballots on like Twitter and Instagram and having nobody filled out, like that's a disservice to the sport.
yeah,
You shouldn't be a voter and not vote. Like,
Yeah, it's your job.
it's your job.
Yeah.
You're given an honor to vote for people who are given. It's probably the biggest honor in baseball to be a Hall of Famer.
to even be on the ballot is
Exactly.
like,
You're doing a
it
disservice.
shows how great you were.
You're doing a disservice to the sport. You're doing a disservice to the players, and you're doing a disservice to the other voters. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think more, just in general, more players should be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that does it for our MLB talk this week. We'll move on to some NBA news. Not too much in the sport this week, but me and Zach are Knicks fans, and the Knicks made a trade for Cam Reddish. I like it. I mean, it was a low risk, high reward deal for a team that needs scoring, and that's exactly what he brings. I think a couple days before he got traded, he had like 35 points in the game, and he played really, really well. And paired up with RJ Barrett, all they need now is just to get Zion, and you'll have the Duke team back.
I like this move, but I don't think it moves the needle for them that much. I think it's
No, definitely not.
it's definitely a good move given what they had to give up. And yes, he's injured right now. Yes, he's in a contract year, but why not? Like the Hawks weren't
Yeah.
using him. You trade Kevin Knox, who was out of the rotation, and a pick that might not be conveyed for years down the road for a
it
22-year-old
protected.
guy who's shown many flashes of being great, is a very good perimeter defender, and under Tibbs, he's only going to get better. And if he plays well, you extend him. If he doesn't, then you didn't give up anything to let him walk.
I mean, they're a team. If they're not looking to win this year, they're a team that's getting older in the guard position. I feel like with Derrick Rose and Alec Burks and some of these other guys, and I think bringing in Cam Reddish for, like you said, a guy who was out of the rotation in Kevin Knox and a protected second-round pick, and you bring in, I think they brought in Solomon Hill as well.
They did,
which is experience, and it's just very low. I don't see the risk in the deal, and very high reward for a guy who was a top 10 pick just a couple years ago.
Yeah, it is definitely a low risk, high reward. Like, like you said, Kevin Knox, just an absolute shitter for the Knicks. I mean, who cares? Just who cares that he's gone? Like, even if Cam Reddish doesn't pan out, like, you didn't give up anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter.
I was surprised that the Hawks would accept that deal.
Yeah,
I don't know what they got out of it.
The Knicks.
I don't really understand it.
The Hawks wanted Quentin Grimes. Knicks said no. Hawks did it anyway. We own the Hawks.
Yep. Yeah. And Quentin Grimes is going to be the Knicks they have a lot of young guys that
they've had
going to be good.
The past few years they've had a very
sneaky good drafts.
A very sneaky, yes. Quickly,
our boy Obi
starting
Toppin
to progress. Who else? Grimes, McBride. We don't have to get into the Knicks that much, but I do think
RJ Barrett's looking like a star.
Overall, this move was no downside.
Yeah. Mitchell Robinson's playing well. I mean, obviously they're not ready to win a championship, but they're on the right track.
But the thing is, I don't think Knicks fans are looking for a champ.
No, they're just looking for a winning team.
The Knicks have been in the cellar of the NBA for so many years, so I think Knicks fans are appreciative that this team is even competitive. Relative,
just like the team is giving them hope.
Exactly.
Although I will say, I mean, I think coming up after last year,
I agree.
I think Knicks.
It's a disappointing year. I think it's disappointing.
I don't think the Knicks. I don't think any rational Knicks fan came into this season expecting them to be a top 4 team again and to compete for a championship. I think realistic Knicks fans expected them to be in between 6 and 9 because of how good the East has gotten.
Be a play-in team that could maybe win a playoff series.
But I don't think that's Knicks fans have been so accustomed to lottery picks and losing. So I think it's even though they might be disappointing in comparison to last year, it's a breath of fresh air overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's one side of New York with the Knicks, and we can go to the other side of New York with Capio's Nets.
Hell yeah!
So you can get into that one.
Although, this is not actually good news. I mean, Bleacher Report just released an article about James Harden maybe not opening to relocating from Brooklyn. So NBA insider Mark Stein reported that that it might not be out of the question that Harden could be traded. And there are rumors now circulating that he could go to the 76ers, which I think I just don't understand why Harden would even think about leaving. I mean, he's in the best possible situation that he could be in, with KD and Kyrie. He has a great team around him. I don't understand why he'd leave. Although that's probably my Nets bias talking. But if he does get traded, I think that trading him for Ben Simmons and a couple picks, I honestly think that could still be a good move for the Nets. I mean, the Nets are they just get lit up defensively sometimes in the paint. I think Ben Simmons, he could lock up any guard in the league, to be honest. But but then he could also somewhat help in the paint too. So I think that would be a decent move. Although I would obviously much rather have Harden stay in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yeah, you obviously have to get an upgrade because the Nets aren't really rebuilding. So like I get the Simmons for picks would be a deal that would make sense for the 76ers, but I don't know if that would make sense for the Nets. They'd have to go out and get someone, if Damian Lillard was healthy, then that would be a deal. But why wouldn't you just keep Harden at that point?
At that point, yeah. Harden's the better player than
there's not many guys available that are better than James Harden. The Nets aren't rebuilding. So I don't know what they would do.
So I don't understand why Harden would even want to leave.
Yeah, I mean, they're a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference, and the Bulls have just gotten blown out by 2 straight teams, I think. Good, like teams they'll see in the playoffs. So the Nets are still looking strong in the East, and they're looking strong overall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's what we got for the NBA news, and that's what we got for the list of topics today. So any final thoughts for this episode?
I really hope Harden doesn't leave, because I will also cry myself to sleep if he does.
Giants, don't be stupid. Hire Brian Daboll. Go Big Blue.
And I'll say it once again, Josh Allen, top 3 quarterback in the NFL, maybe top 2.
Owns the Patriots.
If he wins a Super Bowl, he is the best quarterback in the NFL. And I'm sticking with my pick, Packers, Bills, Super Bowl. It's going to be a really close game. But Josh Allen's going to make it interesting. So, all right. I think that's what we got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. And we'll have another good episode next week. So, Matt, Zach, have fun watching the game tonight, and see you next week.
Yep. Take care.
See you.
You better check the numbers.